So please holler out a question if you have any questions, or put it in the chat if I'm talking over you or over anyone. So tissues are the living fabric. They're made up of cells. They're groups of cells similar in structure that perform common or related function. Histology is the study of tissues, and these are the four main types of tissues. Epithelial covers, connective tissue supports, muscle tissue moves, and nervous tissue controls your body. So these are the four different tissues that these two parts of chapter 4 go over. This gives you a general idea or a general look at where the four types of tissue are located. The nervous tissue is all of your brain, spinal cord, nerves. Your muscle tissue will be in all of your muscles, whether that's skeletal, cardiac, or smooth. Epithelial tissue lines digestive tract, forms boundaries, protects, secretes, absorbs. So glands will make up epithelial tissue. It's on your skin surface. Connective tissue then supports, protects, binds other tissues together. So this will be the most diverse type of tissue in the body. It includes your bones, your tendons, your fat. It also includes blood and all of your cartilage. So we can look at the microscopy of human tissue, and this takes you through some of the different microscopy mechanisms that we can look at. Different magnification levels can show us, this is cilia, which is just a beautiful picture of cilia, which is kind of cool to see. And then the next couple of slides take you through epithelial tissue. So I'm going to kind of skim over epithelial tissue. These are the characteristics of epithelial tissue. The big one is that it's avascular, meaning there's no blood vessels in it. It talks about a polarity, which just means it has an exposed surface and a surface of cells that's attached to a basal lamina or a basement membrane. And this is an example showing polarity. I'm going to take you through to some of the different types of epithelial tissue and how epithelial tissue is classified, whether it's simple or stratified, and that has to do with how many cell layers thick it is. So simple epithelial has one single cell layer, and stratified epithelial has two or more layers. And the second characteristic, or the second name of epithelial tissue, indicates what shape of cells there are. So they'll be squamous, flattened, cuboidal, box-like, or columnar, tall and column-shaped. So again, it's classified based on the number of cell layers, either simple or stratified, and then it's classified based on the cell shape. And then this takes us through, it will take us through examples of simple epithelial, simple squamous. On your exam, I have several, especially in chapter 4, I include a lot of matching questions where I give you a picture of a tissue and I ask you what that tissue does, or I ask you what the tissue's name is. So expect like, there's probably like 20 points or 20 questions for each chapter, or 25, I guess, because there's 4 of them. So for this chapter, I include a lot of pictures and just matching. So I try to keep it easy for you. So this is simple squamous, found in your lung air sacs, also in parts of your kidney. Simple cuboidal is found surrounding lumens in the kidney, so a single layer of cuboid-shaped cells. Simple columnar is found in your digestive tract. It can often have microvilli on its surface, which help in absorption of nutrients from the food that we eat. So this is simple columnar. Again, a single layer of column-shaped cells. And then the pseudo-stratified columnar, pseudo means false. A lot of times this type of epithelium will be ciliated to help move mucus across the surface. And we'll find the pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium. You probably, if you had me for anatomy, I think I use this picture all the time. So it's probably bringing back nightmares of histology. But pseudo-stratified ciliated epithelium, again, it's fake stratified, meaning it looks like there are fake layers, but it's really still one single layer of cells. It'll have goblet cells that secrete mucus, and that'll help trap anything harmful that you breathe in, and the cilia moves the mucus up and out of the respiratory tract. So this is pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar. Then we have stratified epithelial tissue. Stratified squamous will be either keratinized or non-keratinized, depending on if it's alive or dead. And this epithelial is non-keratinized because you see nuclei in the exposed or the apical surface layers of the cells. So non-keratinized squamous epithelial means there's not keratin in these cells closest to the exposed surface. That means they're alive. So you'll find it in parts of the pharynx, the mouth, the throat, the anal canal, any place that gets a lot of abrasion, either food or waste products that's going through it. But these cells give a more moist structure to the area. And I don't have a picture of the keratinized epithelial, but the keratinized layer cells will be dead at the top because they're filled with keratin, so you will not see nuclei. Stratified cuboidal and stratified columnar. Stratified cuboidal is really rare. Stratified columnar, also pretty rare. You'll find it in the male urethra, lining some glands. You should look at an atlas for these two rare types, but it'll just be more than one layer of either cube-shaped cells or column-shaped cells. Another kind of specialized type of stratified epithelium is transitional, which forms the lining of hollow urinary organs, and it has the ability to stretch and then recoil back to its original shape. And this is a look at transitional epithelium. Glands are also in epithelium. They can be endocrine or exocrine. Endocrine is internally secreting right directly into the bloodstream, like your hormones, and exocrine is externally secreting through ducts, like your sweat glands. And this is just a look at some of the types of glands. I don't think I ask you many gland questions on the exam. So I'm going to kind of skip over this for now. Just a look at a goblet cell secreting mucus. Again, you'd find a goblet cell in a pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. More exocrine type glands. Again, glands will be found in epithelium. More than that, I won't ask you guys specific, really, the different types of glands I won't ask you about. But you should know that glands are normally found in epithelium tissue. Different types of secretion depending on how the contents get released. And that takes us to the end of this chapter. I know that was fast, not the chapter, this part. Part B is a little more lengthy. So let me stop this sharing and I'm going to pull up part B. Any questions on that first part though? I'm sorry if that was fast, but I hope it was a little bit of a review, a fast review. Okay, bear with me. I'm just going to pull up part B. Also, I'm going to take this time, before I forget, let me share my screen. Two things else I was going to talk about. So if you still need time for any of the labs, let me know. I'm going to go through and grade the labs. Your grade automatically populated into Canvas, and I won't change those. But if you don't have a grade yet in Canvas because you weren't able to complete a lab or you're still waiting on a laptop, let me know. The second thing, we have some students who are requesting someone to take notes for them. And if anyone wants to volunteer to take notes during the lecture time, I think they can be typewritten or written down. You would take notes during my lectures and then email them off to the DSPS office. And by doing so, there's some perks for taking notes each lecture. You have to do it every time. You have to be consistent. But I think you get priority registration, or in the past you did. So if anyone is interested in taking notes for my lectures, let me put that link into the chat, and you guys can go to that link and to sign up for that. And again, I think you get, let me just read through the email again. You will receive voluntary service hours or priority registration. So I've had other students who've loved to do this before, because usually this means they get in a class, although you guys are probably, this is probably one of the last classes you're taking, but If you are taking notes anyway and you just want to help a fellow student out, take a look at this link. And you can sign up there and there will be more instructions for you there to take notes for a fellow classmate. Questions about that? You guys are quiet tonight. Okay. All right. So here is, can you guys see my part B? Yeah, it's up. Okay, so this is part B. This one's a little bit more lengthy because it goes over the other 3 tissue types of the body. And again, questions that I ask on this part of the exam, I'll have like matching questions with pictures. There might be a few true and false or other multiple choice on subjects within these 2 PowerPoints, but there will be several matching of pictures to either their function or name of the tissue. So connective tissue is the most abundant, widely distributed, most diverse. It's kind of the catch-all. It's the binding and support tissue with your bone, your tendons, your ligaments, protecting, insulating fat tissue, and also transporting substances. So the 4 main classes are connective tissue proper, cartilage, bone, and blood. And this is just a comparison of the classes of connective tissues. Looking at the connective tissue proper will be dense. It'll be loose or dense. The cartilage, there's 3 types of cartilage, and this gives you the cells in each, what the matrix looks like. And the matrix is usually called the extracellular matrix, which means everything in that connective tissue that isn't cells. And then the general features. So these actually 2 slides are a really good summary of probably the next 15 or 20 that we'll go over right now. And I probably won't ask you too many questions that wouldn't be involved in these 2 slides. You'll have to know what connective tissues look like. You'll know what bone looks like, blood, and the general different types and subclasses of each. You should know what type of cartilage is in your intervertebral discs. That might be a test question. Okay. So let's talk about the 3 characteristics that make up connective tissue. All have a common embryonic origin. That just means during development in the embryo, they all arise from what we call mesenchyme tissue. They all have varying degrees of vascularity. So that means cartilage might be avascular, no blood vessels, and bone will be very vascularized, so lots of blood vessels. The cells will always be suspended or embedded in a protein sugar mesh, and we call that the extracellular matrix. And the matrix will just support the cells so they can bear weight, withstand tension, and endure any sort of abuse or stress. These are the elements of the connective tissue: ground substance, fibers, and cells. The ground substance is this gel-like material. I'll let you read through the components of the ground substance, but it's kind of like a jelly-like material or jello. Connective tissue fibers will be collagen, elastic, or reticular. Depending on what type of connective tissue we're talking about, we'll have more than one of a specific fiber type. Collagen will be the most abundant type. That'll be the strongest, the widest in diameter. These are the different cells in connective tissue, either fibroblasts, chondroblasts will be in cartilage, and osteoblasts will be in bone. Cyte means cells. And hematopoietic cells will be in the bone marrow, and they will create red blood cells or erythrocytes. More cell types will be fat cells. Those are adipocytes, white blood cells, mast cells, macrophages. This is a look at connective tissue and all of the components that you might find in connective tissue. Not probably all at once because there's fat cells in here and there's all different types of fibers. But this is just a look at what connective tissue is composed of. The fibers, right here, the ground substance, and those 2 make up the matrix, and then the cells, and these are the different types of cells. These are the 4 main classes of connective tissue that we'll go over kind of right now, and how they all start from a common origin, and then they'll all break into their subclasses. Connective tissue proper will be either loose or dense, and the loose connective tissue proper will be the loose areolar, adipose is fat, and then reticular. Dense connective tissues will be dense regular or dense irregular, depending on what way the collagen bundle fibers move, and then elastic. Loose areolar connective tissue is the most widely distributed. It's kind of the universal packing material between all the other tissues. Loose fibers allow for increased ground substance, so they can just hold water more. So this is a look at loose areolar connective tissue. Again, there's a lot of spaces in between it. It's the body's packing material. Adipose tissue is made of adipocytes, which are your fat cells, and they store lipids. So this is a look at what adipose tissue looks like. It's completely filled up with fat so that it pushes the nucleus of the cell off to the side. Reticular connective tissue, the fibers are much thinner, so it'll look like loose areolar, but the fibers will be much thinner, and you'll see white blood cells within it. The reticular tissue is found kind of in the body or stroma of several organs and lymph nodes, like your spleen. Then the dense connective tissues will be dense regular, dense irregular, and elastic. Dense regular, the collagen bundle fibers will be traveling all in one direction, like this picture is showing. And you'll find dense regular making up your tendons and ligaments because it's extremely strong. Dense irregular has collagen bundles, but it'll be going in all random directions. And you'll find it in the dermis layer of the skin. You can see the collagen bundle fibers, but they're just going in every which direction. So you can see that there. Here's elastic connective tissue. This is the one where, I don't know if it was my class in the spring or a different class, that it looks like layers of lasagna. So it has a dense connective tissue kind of framework to it, but it's made up of elastic fibers instead of collagen bundles. So you'll find elastic connective tissue in the walls of your large arteries because that gives them the ability to stretch. Then cartilage, we talk about chondroblasts and chondrocytes. So this prefix chondro has to do with cartilage. It will be avascular. And these are the three different types of cartilage. Hyaline is the most abundant. It's shiny. It's found at the tips of your bones, your nose, your trachea, cartilage of the ribs. Elastic cartilage is found in your ears and epiglottis. And the fibrocartilage is very strong, and it's found in areas such as your intervertebral discs, ding, 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 exam question, and the fat pads, or the pads around your knee. So it's found in your intervertebral discs and your knee. So here's hyaline cartilage, few fibers. There actually are fibers in there, but they're so compacted together that you can't see them. So this is hyaline cartilage. Elastic cartilage, you can definitely see the elastic fibers found in the external ear. And then fibrocartilage, you see collagen fibers, but they're extremely thin and wispy, found in the intervertebral discs and also discs of the knee joint. Avascular cartilage loses the ability to divide as we age, so injuries just heal more slowly. Very common in people with sports injuries, and later in life, cartilage can actually calcify or ossify and become bony, causing chondrocytes to die. So people who need knee replacements, usually they wear out the cartilage in their knees, or the cartilage will become like bone. Bone is also called the osseous tissue. Let me just stop right there. How are we doing? Is this a review, or is this completely new? I don't know when the last time you guys took anatomy, but I know you probably got it in anatomy. On a scale of 1 to 10, how lost are you right now? 10, I feel really good about it. 1, I'm lost. Can you please slow down? Okay, so I'm seeing some reviews, some 6s. When I read the numbers, I'm really not looking at your name. So don't feel free to put a lower number if you need to. Okay. Okay, or send me a message privately. You can always do that too. Okay. All right, so kind of a review. Okay. And if it's not for everyone, that's okay too. Bone is the osseo tissue. It's made of osteocytes that hang out in spaces called lacuna. It's richly vascularized. So that means there's lots of blood vessels through it. It's good that we're reviewing these tissues, even though it is a physiology class, because they will come back to bite you when we talk about some of these physiological concepts. So that's why we're reviewing it too. Bone is really pretty underneath the microscope. It's one single kind of bone unit is an osteon. You'll have a central canal in it, and the lamella are the rings of bone that surround it. These little lacunae, black pieces, have osteocytes in them. So this is what bone looks like. Blood is the fluid matrix, so it's the most atypical connective tissue. It's the strangest one because it's a fluid. Red blood cells are the most common type in blood. There's also will be white blood cells and platelets, helpful for blood clotting and transporting oxygen, carbon dioxide. So here is blood. Mostly red blood cells are in the erythrocytes. You'll see some white blood cells. And I don't ask you to know the differences in white blood cells, so not for this. Yeah, not for this yet. And then, are there any platelets? I don't think there's platelets shown in this picture, but this area surrounding what we call the formed elements are the cells. The area surrounding that will be the plasma. Muscle tissue is also highly vascularized. It's responsible for movement. The muscle cells have myofilaments made of actin and myosin. We will come back and talk about muscle tissue a lot because you'll need to know how muscle contracts. That's one of the workshops, muscle contraction, the sliding filament theory. So that'll be a good one to review. The three types of muscle tissues are here. Skeletal muscle tissue, voluntary, moves bones, striated, multiple nuclei. So here's what muscle tissue looks like. Multiple nuclei, striations, voluntary. Cardiac muscle found in the heart, involuntary. You don't tell your heart to contract. It's a good thing. Also striations, but the cells have only one nucleus. Intercalated discs are special joints where cardiac cells are joined. So we can see here kind of the branching look of cardiac muscle, almost like Y branches, and the intercalated discs which connect the cardiac myocytes, muscle cells together, which is important just for, it's important the heart contracts as a unit. So the intercalated discs spread the electrical activity throughout the heart quickly. Smooth muscle is found in the walls of hollow organs. Involuntary, does not have striations, and it has spindle-shaped cells with one nucleus per cell. Some people get confused at how to distinguish smooth muscle from some of those like collagen, like dense, or dense connective tissue or elastic connective tissue, because they all look like they're very parallel, stacked on top of each other. Connective tissue will not have a nuclei for each cell. So you'll know this is smooth muscle because you see lots of nuclei spread throughout it. In the cartilage, or the collagen, excuse me, in the connective tissues, you won't find a nuclei for each single cell. So just keep that in mind. Nervous tissue is made up of neurons and glial cells, which are the supporting cells. You'll find this in your brain, your spinal cord, and all the nerves, and it will regulate and control body functions. This is an important one to review because we'll come back and learn the physiology of a nerve impulse. That's what your first workshop is on when it says graded and action potentials. That'll be on the nervous system, which I'm not sure when, I don't know if that's the next chapter or the next unit, but anyway, so it's good to review nervous tissue and what makes up a neuron for this chapter. So here's nervous tissue. These are some neurons. Each neuron is made of a cell body, the dendrites that receive signals, and then the long axon that sends out the signal to other neurons. The membranes, so we talk about covering and lining membranes. There's three types: cutaneous, mucous, and serous membranes. These are just lining membranes. The cutaneous membrane is just another name for skin, and it's made up of the keratinized stratified squamous. It's a dry membrane, unlike the other two types of membranes or coverings throughout the body. So here's the cutaneous membrane, the skin. The mucous membranes, also called the mucosa or the mucosae, line body cavities that are open to the exterior, like your digestive, respiratory, and urogenital tracts. So these might secrete mucus. These are mucous membranes. So this is mucous membranes. And again, these are classes of anything covering or lining the body. And then the serous membranes are found in closed ventral body cavities. So anything closed to the exterior. The parietal serosei will line internal body cavities, and the visceral serosei or serous membrane will cover internal organs. There will usually be a cavity between layers in the serous membrane that has a slippery serous fluid. So these will be a moist membrane, and there are special names given to show their location. So the pleura serous membrane surrounds the lungs, the pericardium serous membrane surrounds the heart, and the peritoneum serous membrane surrounds the abdomen. So this is a look at where these serous membranes are located. And again, they're made of a parietal and a visceral layer. The parietal layer, in this case, the parietal pleura, will surround, line kind of the body cavity or the body wall. And the visceral pleura, viscera means organ. So the visceral layer lines the organs. Tissue repair. So whenever your body's barriers are compromised, the inflammatory and immune responses will be activated to help to repair the tissue through regeneration or fibrosis. And these will go through the steps of tissue repair. Inflammation sets the stage, either through blood clotting or release of other inflammatory chemicals. So for example, if you get some sort of cut, the blood clot will form near that cut. Inflammation will set the stage by releasing chemicals, cells to try to engulf and digest any bacteria that came in from that splinter or a cut, if anything was taken into the skin. Step 2, organization restores the blood supply. So the blood clot will be replaced with tissue that it will be capillary enriched. So the epithelium will be able to start to regenerate through the work of fibroblasts, producing more collagen fibers. Any debris will be phagocytized. That means they'll be eaten up, taken into cells, and broken down. So organization will restore the blood supply. Regeneration and fibrosis will affect permanent repair. So scar tissue will form, fibrous tissue forms. The scab will eventually detach. And really, we're getting to good as new. Tissues that regenerate extremely well are all epithelial tissues, ones that are in contact with either the exterior or a lot of abrasion within the body. Bone tissue will be constantly regenerating to try to increase and decrease the amounts of calcium in the blood. Blood forming tissue is good. Your blood cells regenerate every 120 days. Tissues with more moderate regenerating capacity are your smooth muscle, dense regular connective tissue. No functional regenerative capacity are your cardiac muscle cells, nervous tissue of the brain and spinal cord. New research shows that cell division might occur, and efforts are currently being underway to try to encourage them to regenerate better. Some homeostatic imbalance, a clinical aspect, scar tissue that forms in organs, particularly the heart, can severely impair the function of that organ, and it may cause the organ to lose volume capacity or block substances from moving through the organ. So this is why heart attacks are extremely dangerous, because they damage parts of the heart, and it's hard for heart cells to regenerate and get past that, just the scarring of that. Okay, like this one, scarring can potentially cause progressive failure of the organ, like the heart. Okay, so I know that was going extremely fast. Let me just stop the recording,